Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, a podcast and radio show which features leaders from all walks of life in conversations about courageous connectedness. How do we stay connected to our best selves, especially when we are challenged? What becomes possible when we truly stay committed to our own and others' greatness, also when we don't feel it? Join host Hylke Faber, transformational coach, facilitator, and award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and his guests as they explore leadership greatness in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering.
Well, welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona, where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. This is the 24th episode. I'm your host, Hylke Faber, and I'm here today with Cees Buisman. I'm so happy to be here today with you today. How are you today, Cees?
Well, I'm great. In the Netherlands, it's very much Arizona weather already now for a month. So Dutch people are then very, very happy. And yesterday, for the first time in my life, I did bird watching. And somebody showed me 34 different kinds of birds in 1 hour. So that's very impressive for me.
Wow. Well, I'm so happy there are still 34 different kinds of birds to look at in 1 hour. That's beautiful and really nice to see you again. We met in person as well in the Netherlands about a week ago. And before I say more about this podcast and about Cees, one thing I will say about Cees is I was struck as I was walking into Cees's office with the humility and humanity and commitment I sensed. This is a man who has very deep purpose and lives it, and we'll learn about this more. But before we hear more about Cees, I want to say a little bit more about this podcast series as well as a way of grounding, which we do in the beginning of every single of these Rooted and Wavering conversations. We're doing these conversations so that each of us can connect more deeply to what is true. And listening to others, I often find that I personally get inspiration. One person once said that a mind is like a dangerous neighborhood. It's better not to go there by yourself. And I find that when I think of people around me, I get uplift. I get like, no, it's like I get some more oxygen in the heart, in the brain. I get more possibilities of seeing maybe things a little differently. And it's also very humbling because my ego mind gets checkmated all the time. It's like, nah, that's not the full picture, Hylke. That's not the full picture. So that's what we're here today to experience more, to listen to another leader who I admire for their courageous connectedness to what's important for them, and learn from them about what it's like to be connected to what you truly value and lead from that place. So today we have with us Cees Buisman. He comes with us to us with eons of experience. He got his degrees in 1989. I know that's prehistoric in 2023 for some people. I was alive back then, but maybe a few years behind in terms of age. He got his Master of Science and PhD from the University of Wageningen and research in the Netherlands. And he became Director of Technology and Business Development at PAC. And then he became a full professor at the university and at the subdepartment of Environmental Technology at Wageningen University. Since 2003, as a full professor in the field of biological reuse and recovery technology. And his current focal point is the biorecovery of organics and minerals from waste streams for reuse in industry and agriculture. Now, that's already a lot, but not quite enough for Cees, apparently, because besides being a full professor, he also is the founder, used to be the leader or one of the leaders of, and currently is executive board member of the Wetsus European Center of Excellence for Sustainable Water Technology in Leeuwarden, which is the town that I used to go to high school in the Netherlands, in Friesland, the north of the Netherlands. And the objective for Wetsus is to create a business-driven international multidisciplinary research program for all aspects of water technology. Besides that, he is a father, a husband. He has many interests. I know that. His wife is an artist also. There's a piece of art that we'll discuss in a moment as well, that if you're just listening, I will describe what it's like, because I think it's emblematic for what you're talking about. And let's get into the conversation now. So, Cees, what have you learned in your life about connecting to what's true and what's important to you?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Since you already told everybody how old I was, so there are, of course, many phases in your life where you learn things.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned? Yeah, it's a too open question. There are too many things that come to mind now. I was expecting a different question.
Excellent. I'm so glad. So you're already talking about how it changed, how the answer changed in your life. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how what was truly important to you has evolved in your life. Maybe tell us a little bit about your journey of connecting to what's been important to you in your life.
Yeah, well, when I was at high school, which was in the 70s, there were already a lot of environmental problems in those days. We were also already afraid of the plastic. We were already afraid of the CO2, and there was a climate crisis. So we were always not the climate crisis, the oil crisis. So we were afraid there was not enough oil. So the papers were full of windmills and solar cells. And that time, it's also interesting to understand that the Rhine is one of the biggest rivers of Europe, is going through the Netherlands, was completely dead in 1970, and all the fish died because of the pollution. So it was a very polluted time, crisis time, and I decided that I would go to the university to study environmental technology to clean up the world. And that has been my mission my entire life, to work on this mission to innovate. And slowly but certainly, I found out during my career that indeed innovation is my central theme, and everything that comes with innovation, because that's not so easy to be a real innovator. And every time when I make a sidestep to become more a business manager or more a teacher, then always again I ended up back at the innovation part in all the jobs that I did.
Yes. So a lot of innovation. I want to hear a bit more about what happened after the 70s, and then as you started pursuing your field of studies. Tell us a little bit about Cees as a kid and as a teenager. How did you grow up, and what prepared you to make that choice? Because you were together with, I think there were 13 or 14 million people living in the Netherlands at the time in the 70s. Not everybody said, I'm going to clean up the world. So how did Cees get to that idea?
Yeah, that's very important, because when I was a little boy, I was always convinced I was going to be a farmer. I had my own, in the plot of my parents, I had my own garden, and I could grow my own vegetables, at least try to do that. And I was convinced I was going to be a farmer. But at school, I scored very bad. I could not read. My mother had to teach me reading my father actually had to teach me reading at house, because I could not learn it at school. And the expectations were not so high of Cees. And then all of a sudden, when I was about 8 years, you get this fantastic teacher that somehow fires up your self-confidence. And also my father one time said, well, if you want to be a farmer, you have to go to the Wageningen Agricultural University. So in the Netherlands, when you're 11, you have to prove yourself that you can go to the university already. It's a very early point in life that you have to prove that. So with this teacher and with this ambition of my father, all of a sudden something changed, and I within a few years I was in the top of my class, and I could easily go to the pre-university high school, and then indeed go to Wageningen, which was very special for a boy from Amsterdam, because I'm from Amsterdam. Virtually no one from Amsterdam goes to Wageningen. And so that was, I had a very clear mission, but it changed from being a farmer, it changed to being an environmental engineer.
And how did that shift occur? Why did you not become a farmer?
Yeah, that is intuition, I think. So I was at this university, and I opted for both positions still, but then at a certain moment you had to make a choice to go for the farming side or go for the environmental side, because it's completely different classes. And then my intuition told me it has to be environment. Yeah, so I do not really know why. So.
Yes. You talk about your intuition said I had to be doing that, and it's interesting that you had some awareness of that already at that early age, where usually people's hormones and societal influences drive a lot of our inner compass. But you had some sense already of what was truly important to you from a deeper place. So tell a little bit more about how that connection with that deeper place that guided you to be an innovator kept nudging you along. Like you started to be in university, you started to dedicate yourself to this, and then what happened next?
I guess many times in life you have to make a choice between 2 or 3 things, and then it's always very difficult to decide. That you can freeze you. And so when I graduated as a PhD, so I became a doctor in environmental sciences, I got a job from the oil company Shell, with the offices in Rotterdam, and I was offered a job in Friesland for an environmental technology company. And I was doubting enormously because they were both environmental jobs, but the one from Park would have been much more innovative than the one from Shell, which I was, I think, not completely aware of at that moment. But then again, I doubted about this for about 2 weeks, and then again, my intuition or something inside me told me I should go to Park. So I think I'm very true to myself, because when I look back now, 40 years, then you could really see that probably being an environmental engineer was a much better choice than being a farmer, because that was some kind of child fantasy I had, because I helped on a farm a few times. And if you look at the real life of farmers, it's completely different. And then, if I look back at the company Shell, what kind of career I would have had there, and look at this company I went to, what career I have had, then I'm very glad that I chose that.
Yes.
And this, of course, these are life determining choices, both of them. And trying to be very honest and true to yourself, that's very difficult, because my whole family said, why you go to Wageningen? That is not a big university. How are you going to earn money in the future when you go there? And people, when they hear you could go to Shell, and why do you go to such a small company? So it's clear that for me it was not the big money and the thing that was important. It's always feeling that I should contribute something.
You should contribute something. You contribute so much already, and you at that age you already started to contribute so much in that age, because then you started working for this Dutch company in Friesland.
Yes.
You didn't go for the glamorous big name Shell career. You went for something that most people at that time probably hadn't heard of much. So
no, I don't think so.
So what happened there?
Well, I had invented a new technology when I was PhD, and Shell offered me that I could develop that further at their company and commercialize it. So that was, of course, a fantastic, interesting experience, because there's only a few people in the world that invent something and then come into the position that they can commercialize it also themselves.
Yes.
And you must imagine that I invented the technology for biological gas desulfurization. So gas contains sulfides. That is this rotten egg smell. Very well familiar to everyone.
Familiar, yes, yeah.
It's extremely dangerous. Even in the Netherlands, every year several people die of it, and so you have to remove it. And so I found bacteria that could convert it into elemental sulfur, which is completely safe. It's a completely biological process,
Okay.
and that works very well. And then, so first you do it in lab, but then you have to do it on pilot scale. Then you have to build it on full scale, and then you have to find out all the problems and optimizations and other applications. And very interestingly, I also signed a cooperation agreement with Shell to try out this process for natural gas. Shell is, of course, also very big in natural gas. And then in Canada, we built the first natural gas desulfurization plant according to my process. And now it's used all over the world. So I've seen all these different stages, and that's very interesting. Also for my further career as being an innovator.
Yes. So it gave you some. What did that experience with Shell gave you? What did I give you?
The second one, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, for a company as Spark, who was very big in water treatment, it was impossible to go into the natural gas business. So you needed a company like Shell to do that. And I had talked to Shell already several times before, and every time they didn't believe it. But Shell, of course, is such a big company, so many departments. So finally, we found a department that wanted to try it, and they tried it out, and they couldn't believe their eyes that this biological technology was so incredibly more simple than their chemical technologies, and using no chemicals, and having no side streams, and being much more safe also. That they were flabbergasted, and that's when we signed the agreement to continue developing this technology.
Beautiful. So a man that stayed true to his convictions is what I hear, and was able to push through some pretty hefty opposite winds as well, maybe opposing winds as well. So you were working at this smaller company in the Netherlands, PAC, and tell us a little bit more about what you learned in those ensuing decades about connecting what was true for you and leading and living from that place.
Yeah, so of course you're very young then, and you're not completely aware what is true for you. So, but for me, for my successes at PAC, it's very quickly I became responsible of all innovations at PAC, and that also meant that I had to steer a group of more than 30 to 50 people. And of course, as a PhD, nobody have ever taught you how to be a leader or how to steer or manage people. And also in such a small company, there are no formal training programs. And so you have to find it out a little bit yourself. Yeah, for me, it was very clear. It is impossible for one person, because these are all researchers. So they're all people that are acquiring and studying and their own technologies. And so very quickly, you cannot support them anymore from the content point of view. That's impossible. Right. So for me, it was very clear, if you want to be a leader, you have to support them more from the personal growth point of view and the non-technical part. So I took initiatives to take to also then work on my own personal growth, because that of course, if you don't do that, you can also not be a coach for others. And so that was always been beside innovation, personal growth has always been the second guideline in my life. And I think also for a very large part, the basis of my success, because the family I came from, my father, he had a small business of one person, so I could not get any leadership training from him. He never did anything in that field. So I had to really go from, had to build that up myself. This the company Wetsus I founded. For me, it was very clear that personal growth was going to be one of the pillars of the entire company. So we have a personal growth program for everyone that enters Wetsus from the start.
Yes.
So, and that's and I still very strongly believe that a company can only grow if the people grow. So you can pressure people, then slowly but certainly you will lose any flexibility and any growth potential. If you grow the people, then your entire company grows. So that's
yes. So talk about your personal development a little bit. In your book, Humanity is Not a Plague, how 10 billion people can exist together. I have the Dutch copy here on my desk. De mens is geen plaag. Over samenleven met 10 miljard mensen op aarde. In Dutch, the same as what I just said in English. And in this book, you talk a little bit about the growth as well. And you talk about how there's this, you could say, kind of attractive part, presence, the one, the sense of being. And then you also talk about shadow work. So since I like crocodiles and taming crocodiles, I'd like to hear a little bit from you about what were some of the shadows that you've had to face in your own growth, and maybe realizing like, no, I'm not that. No, I'm not that. That gets in the way of my light. Can you say more?
Yes, well, I think it's the other way around. The shadow disappears if you accept who you are. So when you want to be somebody who you're not, then you have shadow. So if you see yourself as a very nice person, but people around you don't think you're a very nice person, then you have shadow and you always get angry whenever people don't like you. So, but when you know you're not nice, then it doesn't worry you anymore, and then the shadow disappeared, and then you can then be much more inspirational. So getting to know your not so nice parts that you want to polish away, that in my opinion is the at least the easiest part of shadow work. Of course, you're also going to have pathological shadows, which I'm not aware of that I have them, but then you need more, of course, psychological help to get rid of them. But I think for people, for everyone, getting to know yourself better, and in that way, removing your shadow is the easiest and best way to become a better person. And it's especially the things you get annoyed for other people. That's the best direction to your own shadows. That's always has to do something with your shadows.
Can you give an example of what you've gotten annoyed about in other people that was a pointer to your own shadow?
Yeah. Some people are afraid of me because I'm so incredibly direct. I think I can be very diplomatic, but in a normal, especially Anglo-Saxon world, this is considered completely non-diplomatic. And people always have to get used to it, and they like it very much, but because they get what they see. And in the beginning, so people didn't like me because of this, and that for me was not clear, because I probably could not accept yet that that this was my way of communication. So I get a lot of acquisitions about being a difficult person or a harsh person or whatever. And so at a certain moment you realize, then you can also explain better to people that this is not because of them. This is just because who I am. And like I said, most of my staff love it after a while, but in the beginning, no. Well, you have to learn these things about yourself, and also, like I said in the beginning, I in my first job, I did everything I could that people would like me. And that was not a good approach.
Yes.
Because I must also admit that maybe I'm not always so nice, especially since I know now that I have a very direct way of communicating, which many people do not consider nice. It's
Yes. And what I'm hearing you say, Cees, is you have accepted that directness as that's who I am, and I'm not going to be worried that people may not always like it. I've let go of that attachment to people liking me or pleasing everyone. Like, I'm Cees and I am direct.
yes,
And that might scare some people, and that's okay.
yes, and
But
then
I'm here.
and the more you can accept about yourself, the more authentic you become. So I remember one time I went to a training for authentic leadership, and the one thing I learned from that training was that I was by far the most authentic leader in that training, even much more than the trainers. So I didn't need that kind of training anymore. And then you see how polished the idea of managers is, how managers should behave, how leaders should behave, so polished. And that that it was clear for me that I already that was behind me. So
Yes. I love how you say it's behind me. It's like you're pointing to some kind of evolution that a human being goes through, where it may be for a while useful to polish something and to become like this idea of what you think you should be, and then you realize that that's not me. Let me be me. Let me be me. As one of my teachers likes to say, the whole purpose of development is to stand in your own two shoes. You have to stand in your own two shoes. Stand in your own two shoes. So how does that relate to this beautiful painting behind you, if it relates at all? And describe the painting, because not everybody can see it.
Yeah, the painting. So first, I have to tell this story in environmental sciences. Many times people become a little bit depressed that the world is still going backwards if we are talking about the environment. And the reason is then mostly the conclusion people will draw is that people are bad, and that there is a hopeless situation. And from environmental studies, it's proven that it's not true, that 30% of the people are good, 10% of the people are bad, and 60% is influential, you can influence. And so I would call the people that are good from themselves, I will call them suns. And the people that can be influenced, I call them moons. And moon only give light when there is a sun around. So that's the responsibility of suns to radiate light so that the world becomes lighter and better. And every time, that's my new hypothesis, that there is a long time of prosperity, then the suns forget their responsibility and they don't shine as much anymore. And but it's also very nice that already Martin Luther King already referred to this, and Nelson Mandela referred to this, but all in a different way. And they always say it's not so much the bad that we worry, it's so much that the good doesn't shine. So that people are afraid of that. So so that means that the challenge for suns is to radiate more. And so I asked my wife, who's an artist, I give many presentations, could you make an artwork that gives the radiation of a sun? And that is not so easy, because just drawing a sun doesn't radiate. So she made different studies. And the thing that I loved and I use in all my presentations, that is what is behind me. It's a kind of a spiral. The spiral is kind of blazing red, and then there is this yellow in between, and you see all kind of sparks or whatever coming out of it. So it's really a radiating picture. So so this, for me, this is the sun. So to remember me, that if I want to be a good leader, I have to radiate, and I also have to give light to the moons around me.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love this. I love this. When I look at your picture, the first time I saw it as a radiant rose, like a rose window in a cathedral. And I love your description of the radiance of the sun that we need to take accountability for so that we can also influence those people who may be more influenceable, or I would say maybe a little less rooted in their sunness. That's my hypothesis. We're going to take a break in a moment because I want to hear from you, Cees, how you help influence moons and also how you work with the other 10% of people that are in society from this study that you're talking about as a leader in environment. And also, we're going to learn a little bit more about water and how important it is that we pay attention and become more conscious of water. So we're going to take a break in a moment. You'll be listening to Rooted and Unwavering with Cees Buisman, who is the executive director of Wetsus, the World Technology Institute in the Netherlands, and also a professor at Wageningen University in the Netherlands as well. See you soon.
You are listening to Rooted and Unwavering, presented by Growth Leaders Network, the leadership, team, and culture development company. If you would like to learn more about working on connectedness for yourself, your team, or organization, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So welcome back to Rooted and Unwavering. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. One thing that really struck me in the conversation we just had, Cees, was this comment about really accepting who I am and basically breaking through all the layers of inauthenticity, which have something to do with making sure the world likes me. Okay, so thank you for that insight. Now, let's go to this question of the suns, the moons, and what do you call the other 10%?
Well, you automatically can call them the black holes because they suck the light out of the society.
Okay, the black holes. Okay, so
that's English, right?
It is English that I understand. I'm not a native speaker either, but it sounds right to me. So let's think about this suns, moons, and black holes in terms of your current work as an environmental leader in water. How do you practice being a sun? How do you work with moons? And what do you do with black hole?
I think you should realize which of the three you are, and you could count on it. The black holes know that they are black holes, and the moons, of course, are unaware. That's just a matter of what will be if they are under the influence of black holes or under the influence of suns. So as a sun, I guess you have three responsibilities. First, to kiss awake the other suns because they forgot they were suns. Second, to shine light on the moons, to keep the world light and not let it darken. And third, to control the black holes and to take care that they do not take over. And of course, we have a whole justice systems that take away criminals, and you could consider that, but you can be a little bit afraid, of course, that especially the moons under the influence of black holes are in prison, and it's not the black holes themselves, because they mostly are. You could envision that, but also, when you run an organization. There are all kinds of seductions for having an exceptional good salesperson, for instance, which is a black hole and creates a lot of problems in your organization, but you do not want to fire him because he's the best salesperson. So for me, in my first experiences at a commercial company, it became clear to me that if I would ever be in charge of an organization, then I want to have a value-based organization, and everybody who does not wants to be live these values cannot be part of the organization, and in such way, I assume, keep the black holes out of our organization.
Okay.
And then, as an organization not doing business with organizations that are not radiating. That in this way you can try to change the world. And of course, it's not my career further to get involved with black holes, but as a society, we must take our responsibility for political leaders, for people that are CEOs of big companies, that they are not black holes. And somewhere around 1980, we kind of lost that battle, and now we have to re-win it again. Yeah.
So we've lost the battle, and what happened in the 80s?
Well, it is clear that many organizations are led by psychopaths, and they are taking risks with society to increase their profits on the cost of society.
Right.
And the banking crisis, of course, is an incredibly good example, but also the environmental scandals we have all the time. And at this moment, I think that there are examples enough, but you can see it everywhere. Yeah.
Yes. I love how direct you are, Cees. You're practicing what you just said earlier. This is very clear that you don't mince words. You say it as you see it, and I really appreciate that. So then, in terms of how you lead Wetsus, you said, I want to have an organization. I'm choosing to have an organization that's very values driven. And when you fit values, great. And if you don't, you're not going to stay here. So then how you lead Wetsus or co-lead Wetsus, because you now have taken a step back, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that experience in a moment that led you to stepping back. How do you work with this principle of suns and moons?
Yeah, well, of course you try. So in the first place, I do not hire everyone at Wetsus because we have all this PhD researchers that stay for 4 years. So every month we hire several people. So that would be way too much work for me. So that's done by my staff. But I decide who stays. And like I said, I think you are a sun or you are a moon. So it's not something so easy to change. So, but assuming that especially leaders want to go to Wetsus, that there are many suns that need to be kissed awake. Right. So that's what we try to do, of course. And but not everybody is a sun. That's only 30% of the people. Not all of them go to Wetsus, of course.
Of course.
So that I think that's it. And with the values, one of our values is called joy. And so what we think of values is you have a value like joy, and then you define very precisely what are then the agreements that we expect everyone to follow at our organization. And joy, one of the things is that we expect everyone to create a safe environment for personal growth, because personal growth is one of the leading points. But also in joy, we also have to celebrate our successes, and that's also one of the agreements we have in our. So, and then we have 5 of these values.
Okay. So here's a question: as a person who's very direct, how do you create an environment of psychological safety for personal growth for the people around you? Because I'm imagining being part of your organization, right? And I hear you say, I decide who stays and who goes, and I am invited to personally develop. So, and I'm supposed to feel safe. So tell us a little bit about how that works. I am sure it works given how you're talking. And I'm curious about how, from your perspective, that works.
Yeah, I think that is what makes it safe, that it's so clear. And so normally you go into an organization and you know nothing, and sometimes you're fired without that you know what's going on. So for us, it's always very careful process that we define the reasons that you probably would, your career in some other organization would be much more promising. Of course. So we hire about, like I said, 2-3 persons per month. and 95% of them leaves Wetsus, and everybody already is expecting to leave Wetsus in 4 years to go to industry or to university. It's not like it's kind of normal process. It's not like that everybody who is joining Wetsus is expected to meet his retirement here. That's not how it goes. But of all the people that I fired in my life, 95% always thanks me afterwards that I was completely right, and they have a much better life now in another organization. So I would not consider that as unsafe. But the personal growth, of course, is always a process of courage and a process of perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, everybody should find the career that he meets luck. So if you never are lucky, then you probably are in the wrong career. And of course, you need luck and courage and perseverance to get on your right path. I already told you last time that I believe Dutch speed skating. No, it's not Dutch. It's of course a global sport now. But in the Netherlands, it's a very important sport. That I was a speed skater when I was a student, and if you want to learn speed skating, then you have to put your total weight and balance on this enormous small piece of iron. It's less than it's about 1 millimeter thick. It's about 30 centimeter long, and your whole weight has to be on there. But you can only go fast. Is it 50-50? So it must be 50% on the outside and 50% on the inside. And the whole thing of speed skating is that on the inside is the safe side, because then you won't fall. But if you are too much on the outside, you will fall over your skate and you fall on the ice. And it is impossible to be a good speed skater if you don't dare to fall over your skate. And if you don't experience when you go too far, to become a master where you can balance exactly in the middle. And I also think it's about your career. If you always stay on the safe side, there is a very big chance that you don't find your path, because you never found your real flow when you are 50-50 on your skate. So in order to do that, you have to be, fall over sometime. And if you're not prepared to take that risk, then you probably do not find your path and the best career that is there for you.
I love this. I'm also a speed skater, or probably not as fast as you were in your student years, and that sense of having to go make your strike, and you go onto the right foot, and you have to lean totally on that skate, and you can fall over, and it's almost like a transcendental experience of giving over into something that you don't quite knew existed, and then when you're in it, you're like, oh my goodness, and then the next one and the next one. It's very meditative. I found when I did it later, I later on started meditating, and I started to understand the similarity between those two practices, between speed skating and meditating. Very similar. So as you're speaking about this case, this idea of finding your truth by allowing yourself to fall, I'm very struck also by your deep, unflinching truthfulness, right? Because my mind made up, well, maybe being so truthful is not so safe, but actually you taught me just now saying, no, it's exactly the truthfulness that is the safety. And that means, as you said early in the conversation, sometimes people don't like me, and that's okay. And speed skating, I sometimes fall flat in the ice. Career, I might fall on my face. And so tell me a little bit about how you, maybe in your life, have maybe fallen on your face sometimes, and what you learned from that.
Yeah, when I was at my first job, I slowly but certainly it became more and more commercial, and more focused on the bonuses, and then all of a sudden I was wake up because there was all of a sudden new management, and they came with the announcement they thought that we should do less innovation. And then I woke up that I was off my path. I was no longer there, and so I was too much into the commercial. So then I became professor, and it's also completely clear to me the academic world also has a lot of decency. I think is also English, decadency.
Decadence.
Decadence.
Yes.
Yes. So you are spending tax money, and of course, I expect that the society can expect that something comes in return. And So it was also clear that among the professors, many people that was not my way either. So being a professor where reality of the real life society and the academic new insights would have to merge. That was the only acceptable position for me as a professor. And so among the professors they call me businessman, and among the businessmen they call me professor. So that's exactly, then I am exactly in the middle, I found out. So I could not be happy on the outsides of these two, only just on the border. And that's so fantastic about Wetsus, which is a cooperation model between companies and professors, where everything comes together for my life. And it is very interesting that I had to found my own institute where my personality fits the best.
You bring those two things together, the business person and the researcher, the innovator, and also a third part of your personality, which is about self-growth. I heard you're also a lay leader in churches. So tell us about how that all influences each other. I'm sensing you are like a whole system in which you reverberate between those different areas.
Yeah, well, I did. So I did one of the studies I did was integrated psychology, integrated applied psychology, and then we had to read the books of Ken Wilber as an assignment, and then I wrote his books, and he said to grow yourself, you also have to do spiritual activity. And I think, well, I am from a spiritual background of Christianity in the Netherlands, so then I want to do something like that and not be Buddhist or whatever. So that's when I started to go a little bit in that direction. And I think, if the assignment of the church was to make a better person of everyone that's going there, so you go there every week to think 1 hour and hear the holy stories to become a better person, that is a fantastic system for society. Of course, I'm not sure if that's how everybody sees it, but that for me was the motivation, because it doesn't matter what system you choose, capitalist, communist, authoritarian, or the democratic, as long as there is no integrity, then no system will work. Yes. And integrity is a personal choice for everyone. And and that's also something worrisome for the world. If we don't have these systems anymore we used to have, where can people find then this 1 hour per week to become a better person, to work on your own integrity? But for me, that is clear that if you have to run an institute and your people there's no integrity, you cannot run it. It's impossible. You will have fraud and corruption everywhere. So you, as a leader, must be the example of this pure integrity attitude. So that's how it comes together. And the second thing is I also give preach in the church. I give this talk. You say that, preach?
Yes. Yeah.
And that has been a fantastic school for me to tell stories, inspirational stories that are not based on science. So non-technical story, because you must realize that technological people normally hide their personality behind their skills. And if you're a leader, you actually cannot do that. Yeah? You have to be there yourself and show your own personality.
Yes.
And by giving these sermons, you learn to tell stories about inspirational topics that is much closer to you than be hiding behind your scientific attitudes. So it's also one of the things that I tell all the people that we hire. We hire you as a scientist, but you also have to grow as a human, because hiding between your science is not good enough for us.
Yes. You can't hide. You have to express more and more of who you are. I'm thinking of the building of Wetsus, and to me, it's some kind of juxtaposition between Noah's Ark and a beehive. And when I heard your story just now, it's like a beautiful building surrounded by water of wood with planks and places to look through. And I don't do a very good job describing, but what I'm hearing you is I'm almost seeing you in this psychologically in this structure that you have created that is not even linear. The building isn't even linear. It has all kinds of weird angles, like a natural thing that has emerged, almost like an alien creature that has landed in Leeuwarden in this water. And you have created this as a dojo, as a practice ground to become more in integrity, in integrating science, business, spirituality, psychology, living, and you are able, and you're going past that moment on the skates where you're leaning in and you're allowing yourselves to fall in all of these areas and taking big risks. It's one thing to read a spiritual book, another thing is to preach. It's an entirely different thing. So amazingly, we're getting close to the end of our conversation, which has flown by. What would you say to somebody who says things, integrity, yeah, but I feel I'm in a lot of pain and confusion. I don't know how to get to integrity. What would you say to a person like that?
Yeah, that is very difficult assignment. So you need to know, of course, is this pain, is this a psychological problem? Is this because of life is disappointing? Is this because of shadow that you're not true to yourself? That you have to fight, and it's also, I also found with young people, they were eating such a bad diet that their brains got confused just because their brains didn't get the right material anymore. I had it with my own son. When he got, he went to a doctor and he gave him fish oil, and all of a sudden he changed completely, and his will to live was restored. So there are too many reasons why you can be in pain, but not being integer because you are in pain, of course, is not a good reason. That should be apart.
And what does it mean? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, because the time is over, you said I was going to step down at Wetsus, but that's not true. When I started Wetsus, from the beginning, I demanded, I was the first person starting at Wetsus, I demanded there will be a second person to take care of the administration as a director. And I wanted to, I said that that's kind of unusual, that I did not want to be the boss. I wanted us to be together the boss. So we are commonly boss, so co-bosses as it is called these days, co-CEOs from the beginning, so that I could completely focus on the science, the innovation, the inspiration, the personal growth, and he could focus completely on talking to accountants and the government and counting the money and whatever. So that would not be in my way. It's because that is not inspirational for me. Yeah. That was one of the things I found out when I was at this commercial company, that when I had to take care of these things, I became less inspirational to the people that report to me, and I didn't want it anymore because actually I don't like it, and therefore I cannot inspire people. So I had to get rid of that responsibility.
Yeah. I see such a commitment in you, staying true to what lifts you up, what makes you feel radiant. What it's almost like you kiss your own son this way, where you're saying, I'm not doing that. I am not going to be the business leader because that's not what brings me joy. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing here. And to me, that's a very beautiful invitation also to me and to maybe other people who are listening, and ask ourselves, what brings you joy? What is true? What resonates in your bones for you? And what life choices do you make based upon that? But career-wise,
And
life-wise.
you can find that out when you realize it's not your thing. So you have to try it out. You have to be courageous. You have to be on the outside of the skate. And then you find out this is not my thing. And then you can get rid of it again so that you can be in your flow. Yes.
Be in your flow.
And also, writing this book I've been doubting about it for several years because I thought I would expose myself too much, and also not completely clear if my story would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But finally, I decided to do it. I rewrote it already 3 times, and you have the most advanced version.
Yeah.
And now I hear from people it's a very hopeful book in a hopeless time. So I feel very satisfied. I did it. It must be clear that I'm not a writer. I'm not going to write another book, at least not soon. But it's very important to realize, Hylke, that it's also translated in English. And in English, it's called "We can only solve the water crisis if we change."
The latest, we can only solve the water crisis if we change.
Yes, so that's the English version of this book. It's still available, I guess, on all kinds of websites.
Okay. Well, we'll put that also on the website where we talk about this website. We can only solve the water crisis if we change. And what the water crisis is, you'll have to read about in this book. I think you probably have an idea about, simply because we're running out of time. I have one final question.
But you're also running out of water.
And water. There you go. If you had 45 seconds and you had a microphone that you could talk to all 8 billion of us from, into our ears, into our hearts, what would you want to say?
I think it's incredibly important that we all have world perspective, that we do not only see the dry river we experience ourselves, but also realize all the dry rivers in the world. And we have to share everything on this planet, especially the water. And stealing the water from someone else is not going to solve this problem. So we all have to realize that we have to share the water. Especially the rich people must use less water.
Thank you for that. Cees, I knew I was going to be uplifted and surprised in this conversation. And whenever I talk to you and I think my mind's going this way, you go, no, it's the other way. You help me fall over my own skates, which is a wonderful, wonderful experience to have. So I can see what you bring. We've been listening to Cees Buisman, and maybe in a moment I'm going to invite you to say one final thing, whatever you want to say to close. The core insight I had from this conversation, amongst many, was to have the courage to make choices that are true for you, and be willing to fall on your face and then get back up again and make a different choice. Thank you for that. Anything that you want to say by way of closing, Cees?
Of course. Be a sun, be radiating.
Be a sun, be radiating. Well, for me, you have done that today, Cees, and I'm sure others will agree with me. Thank you so much for being with us. It was heart-opening, mind-bending, and I love being with you today. You've been listening to Rooted and Unwavering. Enjoyed being in presence with you. Next time, which will be in July, on July 14, I will be sitting in Cees' chair. I will be interviewed to talk about my experiences with being rooted and also unrooted and quite wavering at times. In the meantime, if you like to hear more of those conversations, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or LinkedIn, where you find these podcasts, also on YouTube. And of course, you can find out more about Cees Buisman on LinkedIn and Wetsus on LinkedIn, and read his book. We can only solve the water crisis if we change, or in Dutch, de mens is geen plaag. And well, we'll see each other again in a few weeks or online somewhere. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Cees, for being with us. With a true honor. You've been listening.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering, leadership conversations about courageous connectedness, presented by the leadership development company, Growth Leaders Network. To learn more, subscribe to this podcast, connect with Growth Leaders Network and Hylke Faber on LinkedIn, or read Hylke's award-winning book, Taming Your Crocodiles. Now take a moment and appreciate something that is great about you. Celebrate the gift that you are and enjoy connecting more deeply to your best self today. See you next time on Rooted and Unwavering.